Hello, everyone, and welcome back. This is training 2 out of a module 3. And today we are going to discuss ADHD. What do you need to know to pass your board certification with easy? So follow along, make sure you're writing down all this information. It will be crucial to you when you are taking your board certification. So let's get right to it right now. Okay, so here we go. All right, this is our roadmap to success for module 3. Right now, we're discussing ADHD and what is ADHD? It's a pattern of persistent inattention or hypersensitivity and impulsivity or both. So, how many types of ADHD do you or the DSM has? Well, three types: inattention, hyperactivity and impulsivity, or both, which is a mixture. So there are three types. It has to interfere with the functioning development, otherwise would not be a disorder, right? ADHD affects the individual ability to focus and control their impulses, right? So let's take a look at it in the inattention type. You need to know the three types and what do they look like. So right now we are discussing ADHD inattention. So those are the kids, or usually the kids that can be adults as well, that have failed to pay attention to details. Difficulty in sustaining attention, does not listen when spoken to, is disorganized, avoid tasks that require attention, right? Difficult tasks, they will shine away. They lose things, they are distracted and forgetful. Okay, so, and you might say, well, I know a lot of people like that. Well, ADHD is in another level, right? So they have a hard time focusing. They just can't complete the task. They cannot sustain watching a long video for a long period of time, right? So that's the inattention type of ADHD. How about the hyperactivity and impulsivity type? Those are the ones that are frigid. They can't stay seated. They leave their seat. They're climbing and running all the time. They're unable to engage in quiet activity on the go. They talk excessively and they have difficulty waiting for turns, right? Their turns to talk, or in a classroom, the teacher asks a question and they'll just, before the teacher asks the questions, they will be lifting their hands and I know the answer, I know the answer when it's not the turn. So they interrupt others, right? So the brain is too fast and they just can't wait the turn. And this is the type of hyperactivity and impulsivity. As I mentioned, you need to discern those two types and can be also a mixture of both. There will be a patterns of each uh, that we just described, and there would be a mixture of both types. So, where does ADHD come from? What do we think of it? Well, let's start by saying that oftentimes, in order to diagnose someone with ADHD, the symptoms need to be present before age of 12, right? And it's known to affect the frontal cortex. So all the things that we learn about the frontal cortex, your executionary uh, activity of the brain, being able to plan, coordinate, having good insight is disturbed. So the frontal cortex, the basal ganglia, and as you remember from module 1, it affects the motor, learning function, emotions and functions in behavior, and also affects the reticular activating system. That's the ability to focus, the fight or flight response, and regulating arousal. And also, as you can see, most of those kids, they have problems with sleep because it affects the awakening transition, and they will have a difficult time going to sleep. So, is it important that you know that it affects the frontal cortex, the basal ganglia, and the reticular activating system? So, write it down right now. So, you should get those questions correct if they come up on your test, along with ADHD neurotransmissions, right? The neurotransmissions or transmitters that are involved. There are three of them. That's the dopamine, norepinephrine, and serotonin. ADHD neurotransmitters are dopamine, norepinephrine, and serotonin. Do not forget this information. It's important to you, and you may see this information again. So, how do you manage ADHD? Most of the times, you will find clients, customers coming to you saying, I have ADHD, and they are so sure that they do when they actually may not. It might be just a disorganization or the way they grew up not being organized. And once you teach them how to be more organized using calendars, cell phones, using other assistants, they may not have ADHD. But for the instance here, for the test purpose, they are mostly treated with stimulants. They are treated with stimulants, and that is with amphetamines and methylphenidates. These are the two stimulants, amphetamine and methylphenidates. When you prescribe ADHD stimulants for a patient, you are to ask about cardiac history, especially if they are older than 50. Okay, you must have an EKG. You also, because it affects your heart, your blood pressure, it can cause a stroke and heart attack. So we should not take this lightly. Now, if you are prescribing a stimulant for a kid or adolescent, you need to know the ages. As you can see here, amphetamine is 3 years old and up, right? As early as 3 years old. Now, everything else to include methylphenidate is 6 and up. So you should memorize this. Amphetamine is 3 years old, methylphenidate 6 years and up. One very important question. At times, when we prescribe uh, stimulants, especially to kids, they may develop tics. Okay? And if they develop tics, your action is only one. Your action is to immediately stop the medication and substitute. Is your action to lower the medication dose? No, 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 no. Is your action to change to another stimulant? No, 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 no. So your action is to prescribe a non-stimulant medication. So what are your choices? You can prescribe guanfacine or clonidine. So these are two medications. There are non-stimulants. There are also can be prescribed. And this, if you look down here, the non-stimulant kinds, all of them also starts with 6+ years old, right? So another choice too is cetrata or atoxinidine was also prescribed, can be prescribed for 6 years and older. So the important thing here to remember is that if a kid it's developing tics despite good benefit of the medication, your action is to stop the medication and prescribe guanfacine or clonidine. Okay? So pay attention to choose medication. There are non-stimulants. Pay attention on the age. Memorize the amphetamines are 3 years old and up. All others are 6+ years old. So non-pharmacological management, right? So not everyone is okay with a stimulant or medications in general. They may prefer a therapy, and therapy may be a good choice. And they can be behavior therapy, parents and patient cognitive behavior training. It's so important. It's teaching the parents how to talk to the patient. For example, if I'm telling Johnny, get out get out of the TV, and at the same time I am on my phone or washing my dishes or what have you, right? This is not gonna work. You have to stop and say, hey Johnny, look at me. You have 5 minutes, and then it's time to get off the TV, right? So looking at them, giving a straight direction, the straight uh, way to go, and allowing the kids to process what he just heard. When this 5 minutes is up, it's your job to come back and do what you said you would do, right? So that's part of the training the parents and training the patient. And psychoeducation, again, psychoeducation needs to be done anytime someone is admitted or being given a diagnosis, right? So psychoeducation, it's always a good answer choice for any question because it's something that we must do at all times. And we can also do a treat learning disorders, right? We can learn how the disorder is so we can be more understanding of the patient. And lastly, we can do family therapy and continue education. Okay. So these are good choices uh, that one can use to either instead of stimulants or in addition to stimulants or other medications. Now, how do we diagnose ADHD? ADHD is a diagnosis of observation. So you observe the patient, you collect information. When collecting information, we can use some scales. The corner parent and teacher rating scales is a good one. My favorite is the Vanderbilt ADHD diagnosis parents and teachers rating scales, which is in the public domain. When a scale is in a public domain, it means it's available for free. You can download it from the internet and use it. You also want to monitor the clinical progress over time, and you want to monitor the growth and development. So, what does it mean in practice? When the kid comes back, you prescribe a ADHD stimulant. You want to know, are they losing weight? Are they having problem with sleep? Are they having any virus change, instability, right? And that's something that you need to do every time because even if the ADHD symptoms are being addressed, but the kid is failing to grow appropriately, then perhaps we need to do an adjustment. So knowing whether if uh, if the medication is working alongside with are we not causing any additional problem is paramount. So before we actually go to signs of stimulant abuse, let's discuss something, okay? For ADHD diagnosis, you must have the symptoms present in two different locations. You must have the symptoms present not only at home, not only at school, not only at grandma's house, because that would be a behavioral problem alone in that specific environment. ADHD does not choose the location. It needs to happen in one, more than two locations to be considered ADHD. If the behavior is only at home, then it does not qualify as ADHD. So, that being said, at times when we prescribe stimulants, they can be abused. You're a drug that's regulated by the government. We must be careful when we prescribe those stimulants. It doesn't mean that they will be abused if they have those symptoms such as insomnia, tremors, increase in blood pressure, heart rate, heart palpitation. agitation, anxiety, irritability, or mood, right? It doesn't mean necessarily they are is abusing, but these are things that we want to be aware of that could give us some cues that the stimulants are being abused or the drug is being taken excessively. Now, here are a few things to be mindful. If you notice, for instance, insomnia, what is your action? Your action is to change the medication to the morning time and provide a alternative sleep medication, right? For example, oftentimes you get tested on, for example, let's say that you give a medication that's IR component, right? So immediate release. And the medication is working so well, but when it comes 3 o'clock, it's no longer working, right? So your action is to give another medication to last for the rest of the day. And if it's lasting the medication throughout the day until the night, perhaps you need to give a shorter medication first and kind of play around so that the kid does not lose sleep. So there is no insomnia side effect that comes oftentimes comes with stimulants. We want to prevent that. You can also add a little bit of sleeping aid medication to help regulate the sleep awakening cycle. Okay, so pay attention on questions that may ask you to adjust the medication in case of a side effect. Always remember, with tics, you do not continue the medication, but you rather change it to a non-stimulant medication. So here is our check and learning. When assessing for ADHD, which of the following factors would be most crucial to examine? A, the ability to pay attention when directly addressed. B, the ability to remain seated in classroom settings. C, behavioral functioning in both home and the school environment. Or D, intellectual functioning based on psychometrics testing, right? So if you need a second to pause the video, do so and pick your answer. Well, if you picked behavior functioning both at home and school, you got this question correct. Remember in the beginning of the video, I mentioned that the behavior must be present in 2 or more locations, and that's the most important thing that you need to know. So the rationale here is that if you are examining behavior function at home in the school, it provides more of a holistic view of the individual's behavior, making it most critical measure for assessing for ADHD. And you see option A, uh, the rationale, option B, and option D. So take a second to read the rationale and understand the reasons behind it was the incorrect answer. Especially D. Let's talk about D. Intellectual functioning based on psychometric testing can provide some insight into the person's cognitive ability, but is not, right, solely indicator for ADHD, is it does not focus on the behavior aspect, which are more crucial for the diagnosis, right? So that's the rationale for D. All right, guys, so this was a quick video on ADHD. My name is Dr. Lopez. I'll see you on the next module.